You are 12. Not in the modern sense, not with a backpack, a phone, and a loose idea of algebra. You are 12 with smoke in your hair and animal fat under your fingernails. Dawn is cold, and your camp is already awake. Someone feeds the fire while someone else checks the edge on a stone blade, listening for wolves, or strangers, or weather. And you are late carrying water because your lower back hurts in a way that makes every step feel public. No one needs to ask what that pain might mean. If there is a child coming, it will not arrive in a hospital. It will arrive on dirt, on hide, in blood, in winter air, under the eyes of people who know exactly how often this goes wrong. Your body is still becoming itself, but ancient life does not wait for your pelvis to hold a committee meeting. Hunger does not care. Predators do not care. Infection certainly does not care. And that is the first thing to understand about the question. Did ancient humans regret having kids at 12? Here's the uncomfortable twist. If you mean literally 12, probably less often than pop history likes to imagine. Because for most of deep human history, many girls were not even biologically ready at 12. In hunter-gatherer populations, menarche was often much later than in the modern industrial world, sometimes averaging around 16, and first birth often came closer to 19. So the idea that prehistoric life was full of 12-year-old mothers is not ancient realism. It is usually a modern myth wearing a fur cloak. But if you mean very young motherhood, early teens, bodies not fully grown, adulthood arriving before childhood has properly left, then yes. Ancient humans knew exactly how dangerous that was. Maybe not with charts, maybe not with obstetric textbooks, but in the oldest way humans know anything. By watching who lived, who died, who bled too long, who survived the baby but not the fever, and which daughters were suddenly gone by spring. Today, the age of 12 sits inside a padded zone. School, supervision, snacks in plastic wrappers, adults arguing online about screen time. In many places, childhood has become an extended hallway with soft lighting and legal protections. But in the ancient world, childhood was not a protected category so much as a temporary condition. You crossed out of it not because a calendar said so, but because your body changed, your labor mattered, and your group could no longer afford the luxury of pretending you were just a kid. That still does not mean ancient people were casual about early reproduction. Quite the opposite. Because having a baby too early was not merely difficult. It was strategically dangerous. First, there was the obvious biological problem. Human childbirth is already a risky design. We are big-brained primates trying to push large-headed infants through a pelvis built for walking upright. It is one of evolution's more dramatic compromises. When the mother is very young, that problem can become vicious. Younger adolescents face higher risks of obstructed labor, maternal death, anemia, hypertensive disorders, and babies born too small, too early, or not alive at all. Ancient people did not have the clinical language for that. They had something much sharper: memory. Second, there was the energy problem. In foraging societies, a new mother was not just nurturing a child. She was carrying, walking, gathering, processing food, keeping warm, keeping up, and not falling behind a moving world. Pregnancy was heavy before the baby was heavy. Lactation was expensive. If a young mother's own body was still growing, then two growth projects were competing for the same calories. Nature is not sentimental about those negotiations. Third, there was the childcare problem. Human babies are absurdly helpless. Foals stand. Calves wobble into life with rude optimism. Human infants arrive like unfinished ideas. That helplessness is part of the bargain that gave us giant brains, long learning, language, imitation, and eventually tax law. But it also meant that a baby was never just one person's problem. A very young mother without support was not simply vulnerable. She was standing at the edge of a demographic cliff. And fourth, there was timing. In mobile foraging life, one baby already slowed a group. Two very close together could be catastrophic. Among hunter-gatherers like the Jew/Hawansi, long breastfeeding and frequent nursing often stretched birth spacing to years, sometimes around 44 months. That was not primitive inefficiency. It was population management done through bodies, behavior, and custom long before spreadsheets appeared to make everything look official. So if early childbearing was so dangerous, what did humans actually do? This is where the story gets much more interesting than the cliche. They did not simply throw children at the problem and hope for the best. Humans built culture around reproductive risk. In many foraging societies, puberty did not instantly equal fertility in the practical sense. Menstruation might begin, but ovulation could remain irregular for years. That biological delay mattered. It created a buffer zone between menarche and first pregnancy. Among some hunter-gatherer groups, that gap averaged several years. In other words, the human body itself often refused the fantasy of instant reproduction. Then culture added more layers. Age grades, initiation rites, food taboos, marriage rules, sexual norms, supervision by older women, knowledge passed from mothers, aunts, sisters, and grandmothers. None of this made childbirth safe. But it made it less random. Societies changed again once they became agricultural, settled, hierarchical, and inheritance-obsessed. Now, land mattered. Property mattered. Lineage mattered. Girls could be married very young, not because it was biologically wise, but because family strategy often outranked female comfort. In ancient Rome, for example, the legal minimum age for girls to marry was 12. But even there, the reality was more complicated than the stereotype. Many first marriages, especially outside elite circles, happened in the mid to late teens. 12 was a legal threshold, not always the everyday norm. The law had one idea. The body had another. Society spent centuries pretending those two were close enough. Archaeology catches only flashes of this world, but the flashes are haunting. A pregnant young woman buried in Upper Paleolithic Italy, known as Ostuni I, reminds us that adolescent pregnancy is not an abstract concept invented by historians. It was there, in bone and burial, tens of thousands of years ago. A young body, a fetus, a community that buried them with care. That grave is silent on regret. Bones usually are. But it says something equally powerful. These pregnancies were significant enough to leave marks in ritual, memory, and the archaeological record. Ancient people, too, were not stupid about patterns. They knew some mothers needed help more than others. Which brings us to one of the strangest and most beautiful facts about our species. Humans did not solve reproduction by making mothers superhuman. We solved it by making motherhood social. Grandmothers matter in human evolution so much that some researchers argue they helped shape what humans became. Older women, especially after their own childbearing years, could feed weaned children, reduce the burden on daughters, and improve grandchild survival. In groups like the Hadza, the presence of grandmothers has been linked to better outcomes for children. This is not a sentimental hallmark version of family. It is cooperative breeding. A species-level strategy. Human children survived because other humans kept showing up. That is the unexpected twist. Early motherhood was not just a private tragedy or a biological hazard, it was one of the pressures that helped force humans into deeper cooperation. Around dangerous childbirth, helpless babies, and expensive childhood, we built kin networks, shared labor, female knowledge systems, alloparenting, rituals around birth, rules around sex, ideas about maturity, shame, and honor. Entire moral worlds grew around one blunt fact: human reproduction is too difficult to leave to the individual. In that sense, the question, did ancient humans regret having kids at 12? Opens into something much larger. It asks whether human culture exists partly because our offspring are so costly, and because the young female body is not a machine that can be pushed without consequences. It asks whether civilization begins not only with tools and fire, but with who helps when a girl is in labor. Why did humans develop such intense social emotions around sex, family, legitimacy, inheritance, and care? Because beneath the customs and taboos sits an old evolutionary truth: reproduction can destroy a life as easily as it can extend one. Something darker sits underneath. 2. How often did societies know a practice was cruel, dangerous, or premature, and keep doing it anyway because economics, status, or power found it convenient? Ancient people were human observant, loving, adaptive, and sometimes brutally willing to normalize what hurt. So did they regret it? Some surely did. Individually, privately, in ways archaeology cannot recover. A frightened young mother, a grandmother who had seen too many difficult births, a father calculating food and winter, and one more crying mouth. Regret is old. Human beings did not invent it in the suburbs. But as a species, we also learned from it. That is the more important answer. Human communities kept modifying behavior around the danger. Delaying, spacing, supervising, sharing, ritualizing, storytelling, turning raw biology into social structure. Next time you see a 12-year-old today, laughing too hard, half lost in a screen, still moving through the world with that unfinished, bright, precarious softness, consider how deep the contrast really is. For most of human history, the line between child and mother was not guarded by comfort. It was guarded, badly and unevenly, by body clocks, kin, custom, and luck. And the truth that we now find that line shocking may be one of the clearest signs of what humans have spent millennia trying to build. A world where survival no longer gets first claim on childhood.